Apparently, the Prime Minister is facing calls for an investigation. Did he breach parliamentary rules because he failed to declare some of his wife's expensive clothes were bought for her by, guess who? That Labour donor, Lord Wahid Ali, who also had a pass around number 10 Downing Street. Highly unusual for a donor to ever get a pass to Downing Street. Well, we've got in the studio with us the former Labour advisor, Matthew Talbot. Matthew, you were with the Labour Party until a few weeks ago.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
This is an unnecessary own goal by the Prime Minister. Why didn't he just declare immediately that his wife had received about £5,000 worth of free clothes from Wahid Ali?
I think it's more of an administrative error, I'd say. Having dealt with MPs' expenses before for different MPs, someone in the office has clearly forgot, or they've got swept up in the idea of it being a general election and let it slip. I do think there's something very different about the Wahid Ali stuff compared to an ordinary donor, because Wahid Ali, of course, is a Labour politician and has been for about 25 years. I also think it's more of an own goal because, for me anyway, I think this is a little bit of a Westminster bubble story. I don't think it's necessarily a story, but the Labour Party have made it one with the bizarre line yesterday that Mrs Starmer needs the clothes to look her best for the country today. Well, you know, I'm here addressing the public today on GB News and I've bought my own suit and tried to look the best as I can. I think that's a bizarre line that will only irk people further.
They've got a combined income of over £200,000.
Yeah.
They live in a Grace and Favour house. They have to pay some tax on that, of course. Why can't they afford to buy their own clothes?
I don't know. It's a question for them, really. I think there's nothing wrong with taking some advice. I won't name names, but I've got fashion experts in before to help MPs I've worked for who I think needed some work but might not have listened to me. No, I will absolutely not be naming names. Angela dresses, perfectly fine for herself. But no, I think there's nothing wrong with getting advice, and maybe if they wanted to buy him some specs or whatever. I just think the excuse isn't going to go down well with the ordinary
Particularly,
public.
Matthew, when we've had the pensioners, poor pensioners who barely are going to... Well, we've had research coming out from within the government today that 800,000 odd pensioners are going to... will be hard hit by this winter fuel being withdrawn, who won't qualify for the pensioners' credit.
Yeah, and that isn't a Westminster story. I've said before, I follow England all over, and I follow my football club all over the country. And anywhere you go, if people ask you what you do when you're in taxis, everybody says, "Oh, they're freezing the pensioners." They're free. It's really cut through everywhere. So, and I've always said, Rachel Reeves could easily get the money elsewhere for the amount of money it is, and it shouldn't be happening.
When I heard this story breaking about the clothes thing over the weekend, I just thought, it's irrelevant. I don't really care. It's only buying some clothes. Like you say, it's a Westminster bubble story. And then when you stop to think about it, what it boils down to is the fact that there can be somebody unelected, but wielding influence over the most powerful couple in the country by what might appear to be quite benign, buying them some clothes or sending them out with a personal shopper. But it just makes them appear vulnerable to manipulation. I think that's what it is. Like, if somebody came along and said to me and Andrew, because we do buy our own clothes on TV News, if somebody came along, Andrew, and said to us, you know what, it was about, isn't he given £75,000 in total? Maybe not just for the clothes, but for everything else.
Yeah, he's had more freebies than just about any other MP.
And if they came in and just out said, we're going to buy you these clothes, Andrew, and then we would automatically be going, what are you going to want in return? And there's no such thing as a free lunch, as my mother would say. There's no such thing as a free suit or a frock. Why is he doing it?
Wahid Ali?
Yeah.
I can't really knock him. He's a very savvy politician who thinks he might be able... I assume, anyway, can maybe get what he wants out of Keir. I think also I'm not...
Exactly, there you go.
But I'm not...
And he got an all-access pass to number 10, unheard for a donor.
I agree, but again...
Wander in and out any time he likes.
But at the same time, to be fair, he's a politician of the last 25 years and was a big part of the Blair era, so I don't blame Keir for necessarily wanting...
He's not an elected politician.
Yeah, but a bit like...
He stand as an MP.
I agree.
He got made a law.
I agree.
Let's just remember that. No one elected this guy. If he wants to be an MP and wield influence under the democratic process, then stand as an MP. Don't buy your way in.
But at the same time, the same could be said of Morgan McSweeney, Sue Gray. The government is filled with people who were unelected as advisors behind the scenes. Dominic Cummings, obviously. We all know these names.
Yeah.
So in a way, they're potentially, if you want to use the term, open to manipulation by them as well, because they're there to guide them either for the good of the country or for their own ambitions.
But then doesn't that mean that the elected MPs and politicians in that environment should be aware of how that looks, of the risks to that system?
I'd say you'd be surprised at many that don't think like that. What I would say is you want to surround yourself with people that will tell you how this may look. And I think, listen, I'm interested in the sort of class element of this as well, because where I come from, if you were to accept...
Which is where?
Stockport. I'm from Stockport, Greater Manchester, and if I was to accept freebies, right, there's the odd thing, I'll go to a football game, whatever, I get why Keir does that. If it was clothes, jewellery, whatever it might be, I'd feel a bit of a scruff. I'd feel a bit of a, do I need hand-me-down sort of thing. It's funny, the higher up you go... Well, this is it, the higher up you go, and I'm not knocking them, listen, you get some free frocks and suits out of it, more power to you, but it's the way that you're happy to. I don't know, the higher up you go the class system, you seem to get more freebies, actually, as well.
It's a good point. But what's the other thing, Matthew? This is a Prime Minister's wife who doesn't do much of this being in public with him. We hardly see her. So why did she need £5,000 worth of clothes when I think we saw her once during the election campaign?
I don't know. Again, these are questions for her. Maybe she'll be attending things in said dresses or whatever. I don't know if she's still within the full-time role of the NHS, which, you know, is a great thing, whatever. I think, you know, ultimately, if she was to accept free clothes, that sort of thing. And that's why I think it's almost not a story, a bit like what you said,
No, because
Bev,
I think you hit the nail on the head, Matthew. I was struggling to find out why it's problematic. It has no dignity.
Well, maybe
it lacks class, it lacks dignity, and you're the highest office in the country. You should be dignified above
Matthew,
all else.
Come and see us again on this programme.
Of course.
Talking to you.
Happy to.
Talbot used to work for the Labour Party until the election. Now, Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, is in Rome today meeting his Italian counterpart, Giorgia Meloni, if you like my Italian accent.
That was very good.
To discuss tackling illegal migration.
I didn't know you spoke Italian.
Yeah, the Prime Minister's just been talking to reporters, so let's take a listen.
I was very worried by the news about this attempt. Looks like an assassination attempt. Very, very worried about it. Obviously, there's now an investigation going on, so I won't say much more about the details. But I think it is really important that we're all very, very clear that violence has no part to play at all in any political process. So deeply troubled, let the investigation take its place, but absolute clarity. Violence, no place in political discussion at all, anywhere.
You're here in Italy talking about irregular migration. Italy's new Albania deal, how could you potentially replicate that?
I'm here to have discussions here at this coordination centre and with the Prime Minister about how we deal with unlawful migration. And here there's been some quite dramatic reductions, so I want to understand how that came about. It looks as though that's down to the upstream work that's been done in some of the countries where people are coming from. I've long believed, by the way, that prevention and stopping people travelling in the first place is one of the best ways to deal with this particular issue. So I'm very interested to know how that upstream work went. Looking, of course, at other schemes. Looking forward to my bilateral with the Prime Minister this afternoon. But we've already got a shared intent to work together on this trade, this vile trade of pushing people across borders.
And finally, you were elected promising change, and in opposition you were very critical of Tory donors paying for things for previous Prime Ministers. Yet you've taken money for clothes for your wife, you were late with a declaration. What do you say to people who think you should be paying for your own clothes and that you're bringing just more of the same?
Well, let me shed a little light on this. It's very important to me that the rules are followed. I've always said that. I said that before the election. I've reinforced it after the election. And that's why shortly after the election, my team reached out for advice on what declarations should be made, so it's in accordance with the rules. They then sought out for further advice more recently, as a result of which they made the relevant declarations. But for me, it's really important that the rules are followed. That's why I was very pleased my team reached out proactively, not once but twice, because it is very important that we have transparency, very important that you and others can see that the rules are being followed.
Well, he didn't answer the question, did he?
No.
Why don't you pay for your own clothes, Prime Minister? And why don't you pay for Mrs Starmer's clothes, Lady Starmer's clothes? Bearing in mind, there's often been a debate about should a Prime Minister's consort, particularly if it's female, get support for their wardrobe because they're on parade often. But we don't see her. She's taken a decision to rarely be seen. I think we saw her once during the campaign and, of course, when they walked into Number 10 together. So why does she need £5,000 £5,000 wardrobe provided by a donor?
it just lacks dignity.
Yeah, it is. It's
classless,
Yeah.
is what it is. It just lacks dignity to take the money of somebody who is not an elected politician, even if they are part of your party, for something as sort of trite as clothes.
I know. And also, you have to remember, he, as leader of the opposition, was earning £156,000 a year, driver and car thrown in.
Yeah.
She's on 50-odd thousand as an occupational therapist in the NHS. Not as if they're short of a bob or two, is it?
You don't need, thing is, you don't need to go out in designer dresses, even if you're the First Lady. Or,
Yeah, and
you know,
she's not First Lady, because we don't have that system
so
here.
I sit here in my Marks and Spencer's blouse.
Okay.
You know, you just don't need to spend that kind of money on clothes, even if you're in the public eye. I don't think it's... And well, mind you might say your papers would be lining up to judge her if she looked rubbish.
Yeah, but still, you can dress smartly. You can go to Gap. You can go to Next, can't you?
Gap.
Is Gap still around?
She can't dress in Gap, Andrew.
Well, yeah,
She's not going to turn up in a jogging suit outside 10 Downing
she could.
Street,
No, when I
is
mean
she?
Zara, she could go to Zara.
Primark, Zara, other brands are
David
available.
Cameron's wife always looked very elegant, and she often went to Zara.
David Cameron's wife.
Yeah.
She's got her own designer dress
She has
company.
now. She has now.
Yeah, she always wore like
Keffin. Keffin
it's called. How do you know that?
I had to write about it once.
Oh.
Because I was told that she had like a store within one of the big department stores.
Yeah, Harvey Nicks or Selfridges.
She had a flipping just
rail.
A rail.
I think it's pronounced Seffin.
Is it Seffin? It's the initials of her children. It's the initials of her children.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we've given them all enough publicity, but we don't want your free clothes because we're not buyable, are we, Andrew?
Well, not. I buy my own suits. Thank you very much.
We can't be bought.